it dawned on me a few minutes as I was listening to Alex sort of round out that great presentation. I'm like, I should probably go put a microphone on. And yeah, sorry, I'm a little late here. I was really enamored by those wonderful words by Alex. Mark, I want to just do a couple of things. I'm a Southern Baptist, which means that I say amen and thank you a lot. Amen and thank you, Mark Flynn. Give him a round of applause. Matthew Sign, Phil Marwell. I don't think Hillary's here right now, but give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. Here's my last fun one. I've got Dave, and you're going to stand up too. Dave Lackey, stand up. Kyle Williams, stand up. Jim Hansen, stand up. Adam Wallette, stand up. Jim was the second Campbell Award winner. Thank you for just bringing class to join up. He went on to become a Rhodes Scholar, went to Colorado, which is much to the chagrin of ASU. But thank you, Jim, for the great guy you are. Adam Wallette, when I was president of Robert Morris University, was a hell of a linebacker. Now he's a hell of a data analyst. Kyle Williams, soon to be Dr. Kyle. Where's Kyle? Right there. Yeah, you think it's Ocho Cinco, but it's not. It's Kyle. Kyle, great football player, ASU, medical school, helping us build a new medical school at Arizona State, works for me. So thank you, Kyle. And that's my brother from another mother. That's Dave Lackey. I took my trip to the Air Force Academy in 1987 as a state champion football player out of Plano, and he showed me around. And love you, David. He's a great guy. I'm going to tell a couple of flying stories here, so bear with me. He's a hell of a lot better pilot, engineer, football player than I could ever hope to be. Now, all I can think about is this right now. Who knew Bill Campbell? Who knew Coach? Who met him? Who knew the man? Oh, man. Okay, I'm going to tell you one thing. All this stuff about Bill is great. The stories about leadership and coaching. But the one thing that Bill Campbell would tell you, if he loved you, he'd slap you kind of hard and say, don't F it up. And the F meant what you thought it meant. So I'm going to try not to F this up. In the honor of Bill Campbell, I'm going to try not to F this up. I'm going to talk a little bit about the school I'm at right now, give you a little bit of my background. And then I'm going to jump into a talk I call the 4 Bs. Very simple stuff. You all are smart people, thoughtful people, but I'm going to keep it very simple. Keep it KISS, as it were. But that's me. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Executive Vice President of Arizona State University. This is who we are. Just very quickly, we're big, inclusive excellence at scale. We have 100,000 students online. We have 80,000 students on our campuses. We have 310,000 learners that are not even students pursuing degrees. 25,000 baristas at Starbucks are pursuing degrees at Arizona State. We have a $5.1 billion operating budget with a B. I ran a school called Robert Morris University before that. It was a $200 million, 5,000 students, Adam, if you remember correctly. And now I'm at this place as a chief operating officer, effectively the number 2. It's $5 billion. It's like being the head football coach at, say, Harvard and then going to be the offensive coordinator at the San Francisco 49ers. So that's where I am in my journey. Been there for about a year and a half. Ran 2 colleges before this for about 13 years. We're the largest D1 and R1 university in the country. 158 countries represented, so we're the largest destination for all international students at a public university in the United States. So that means one big thing, one great thing, right? Great food. You come to Tempe, you can get any food you want, man, because we got it all there, baby. Now, a little bragging, Best Buy, a top 10 in patent, #1 sustainability. AAU is a great club of about 69 of the top research universities in the country. #1 for global impact is voted by the Times, and #1 in innovation for 8 years in a row. So we consider ourselves a very innovative university. We have this wonderful charter. I'll draw your attention to it real quickly, that we're going to judge ourselves by whom we include and their outcomes as opposed to whom we exclude. That's why we're big. Not everybody gets a chance to get a scholarship, go to a university, strap it on, not have any debt, win some championships. A lot of people, single-parent families, military, life circumstances don't allow them to go in a sort of regular linear way. We as a university want to do that. We want to do the traditional thing, but we also want to help people meet them where they are, take them where they need to go. And when we talk about leadership, one of the things that Liz had mentioned, but it's a great comment to think about as you kind of move forward, the fit of the organization you choose is very important. Find a place that's aligned with your values, then all those things about multiplier and diminisher all kind of fall in line when you believe in the mission, right? So that's our mission, that's our charter. So that was the commercial brought to you by Chris Howard. Here's the talk, the 4 Bs. #1, let's see here. Haggard Middle School, 1983, 84. Chris Howard, they used to call me Howie back then, back when I had hair. Howie shows up to middle school in 7th grade, and I show up with a tie. Now, let me give you this, and people are snickering at me already. You're the guy who used to pick on people. I know you. Kick that guy out. So, here, let me set the scene. It's Texas. It's hot. It's humid. Could barely get people to wear underwear to school. And here I am showing up with a tie on. And people are like, hey, Howie, why are you wearing a tie to school? I go, well, here's the deal. I want to be somebody of significance. I want to be a leader. I want to make a difference in my community. And they're like, well, Howie is on crack cocaine. But he wasn't on crack cocaine. Just a little meth. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't do any drugs. Say no to drugs. Didn't do any drugs. Just kidding. But I really did. I really wanted to be somebody of significance, and I didn't mind the teasing and the goading or whatever, but I wanted to be myself. So be yourself. Fast forward, 9th grade. They had something in 9th grade at the high school, Vines High School, where you could be in something called JROTC. People know what JROTC is? It's like ROTC for kids. You can do it in a high school. Most public high schools, many public high schools have it, not most of them, many public high schools have it. And so I wanted to play football and be in JROTC. Nobody did that. I was the only one. So remember, here's the optic. In 9th grade, I wore a tie to school every day. And for Army JROTC, you had to wear your uniform. And back then, it was a BUU. You know what a BUU is? It's a butt ugly uniform. Yeah, it's butt ugly uniform. It's green, but like I would say Gomer Pyle, but they don't know who Gomer Pyle is. Old TV show. You go Google Gomer Pyle, know what that is. But it was an ugly green uniform, not with any medals or anything like that. And so I'll tell you what, the optic was, I'd show up to school, 9th grade, tie on every day, and then every 5th day I would be in uniform. I'll tell you what, I was a real ladies' man. No, I was not. But I was myself. I knew that I wanted to serve my country. I was thinking about going to West Point at the time. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I'm going to the right service academy. I went to Air Force, not Army. But I had this mindset to be myself, and I was okay to get the teasing. And my big brother, who went to Baylor, who played football with Matthew Sine's brother at Baylor, picked on me a lot. I'm still in therapy about that. But anyway, getting teased in the locker room, getting teased by my big brother more than anybody else. But I got through it. I did okay. Fast forward to my senior year, man, I picked up some steam. Student body president, head of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, team captain on a state championship football team in Texas, which means something, right? Texas high school football. And by that point, Cadet Howard had become Cadet Colonel Howard. Man, I was a badass. Excuse my friends, sorry about that. That's a little, I let that one slip out. No, I didn't. I was a badass. I'll say it again out loud. Man, I had ribbons up to here and medals down to there, 3 diamonds on my shoulder. They even let me bring a saber to school. I had a sword. That's crazy, man. So I walk into my uniform, I'm jingling, baby. I'm jingling with my stuff and everything. I go in the locker room, my buddies, John Stevens, Bobby Schrader, quarterback and fullback, used to tease me back in the day. Right now, I was like, back off, man, you better watch out. It's bad, brother, man. So this guy who wore a tie to school in 7th grade, had worn a butt ugly uniform in 9th grade, had risen to this pinnacle as a senior in high school. And then I went to a high school, had 1,300 people in my graduating class. We do everything big in Texas. It's the biggest graduating class in the state of Texas. There were 29 African Americans out of 1,300 students. Everybody else, well, they weren't African American, they were white. But I got up and I gave a speech for graduation, and I said, thank you for judging me by the content of my character rather than the color of my skin. And it also just goes back to that whole idea of just saying, I'm going to be my best version of myself. God has made you, or whatever being you believe in, or beings you believe in, has made you in an image to self-actualize, to self-master. And so many times in your life, even now, as you start this journey, they're going to tell you you need to be, you ought to be, you should be. I remember fast forwarding, being myself. I was a rising executive at General Electric, and I remember going in and talking to a group of friends of mine, including Reed Hastings, who runs Netflix, and they were like, it was kind of a campfire thing through the Aspen Institute called the Henry Crown Fellowship, and they're like, I was thinking, I think I'm going to go into higher education. And I remember my friends going, hey, we need you to be, I want you to be the CEO of GE one day. I go, well, why don't you be the CEO of GE one day? I'm going to be myself. Now, these are high-class problems, don't get me wrong. These are champagne problems, as my 25-year-old smart Alex son would say. But nonetheless, just remember that. Remember when the pressure is on for you to be something that you don't want to be, that this good-looking brother with the blue coat and whatever shirt who was late coming up on stage said, be yourself, okay? So that's number one, be yourself. Another B. Okay. Now, he didn't get my, oh man, you know what? Okay, now they're gonna mess my slides up. I don't know how. I'm gonna improvise here, so y'all stay with me. My slides got a little straight around. The second B is gonna be empathetic, okay? Now, who's that guy on the right? Who's the good-looking dude with the high top fade? That would be me. So, that was when I was a Rhodes Scholar. Bill Clinton came over to speak at Rhodes House when my second year there. And who's met the former president? Raise your hand. Anybody met the former president? Okay, here's you met him. So the interesting thing about Bill Clinton is this. He's taller than you think he is. He's a very tall guy. And when you talk to him, he's really, really into you. It's the coolest thing in the world. So you talk to Bill Clinton, he's looking at you like this. If you go left, he goes left. You go right, he goes right. You try to fake him out, he's on you. Then he goes, I feel your pain. You're like, whoa, this dude feels my pain. I love this guy. So Bill Clinton is a very empathetic person. He has the ability to put himself in other people's shoes. Is a leader, in addition to being yourself, you want to be empathetic to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes. It's different between sympathy and empathy, right? Sympathy is, I feel bad for you. I'm sorry that that happened, boo-hoo. Empathetic is, I understand and appreciate your point of view. I know so many of the speakers have kind of talked about that before, but let's kind of continue on this journey of empathy. So bear with me on the slides. I had to do it on a PC, and I think when I went to an Apple, I got messed up, so I apologize in advance. So I might have to go back a little bit here. No, I'm okay. Good. So on the left, what's that? The movie. It's not a trick question. It's just to make sure you're awake, okay? Avatar. On the right, what's that? You know that book? Power of One? Who's read Power of One? Okay, PK, that's right, PK. So my wife happens to be South African. The book is set around World War II in South Africa. It's a South African kid who happens to be white, and he's, kind of a little runt in the community, and he starts boxing, right? So it's pretty cool. He has a Zulu guy who becomes his trainer, his boxing trainer. And one of the things that PK notices about the Zulu gentleman who's training him is that when that guy is interacting with people, fellow Zulus in the community, they greet him and they talk a certain way. It's pretty cool, and this is how it works. When they say hello, the response is, I see you. How you doing? I see you. So I'm gonna come down here, I'm gonna practice what I preach. This is what they do in the tradition in South Africa. So if I come up, so I'm gonna have you say, how you doing to me, and I'm gonna respond the way they do in the book in the Zulu tradition. So why don't you go first? So say hello to me.
Hello, sir.
I see you. You can be more original than that.
Hey, how you doing?
I see you. Hey, I like that. That's my brother. Roll like that. I see you. I see you. I see you. I indemnify your humanity. This is where leadership starts. It starts with seeing folk. Because so often when we're trying to do our thing and be leaders, we see around people, we see over people, we see through people, but we don't see them. I commend you this. If you don't see people, you can't lead people. If you don't indemnify their humanity, how can they rest their hopes and dreams and aspirations in you, right? So leadership has to do with empathy and seeing people. There's a great book called The Invisible Man. Now I'm back on track, I think, here. Called The Invisible Man by a guy named Ralph Ellison. Ralph Ellison wrote this book. It was based in Oklahoma City, considered to be the greatest novel written by an African American. The character's name in the book is Invisible, right? And the way the book starts out, it's a beautiful line. It says, I am an invisible man. It's a young black man in Oklahoma City, circa 1945, 46. I am an invisible man, not because you cannot see me, not because I cannot be seen, but rather because you refuse to see me. And think about so many people and all those people in our society that just are not seen. Whether they're black, whether they're gay, whether they come from a certain socioeconomic strata or whatever. Think about how that makes you feel as a human being when people just refuse to see you. That's a beautiful way that Ralph Ellison said that in that book. Now, these are some old white people. I'm going to talk about them real quick. In a good way. Some of my best friends are old white people. So, this guy on the left, that's Benjamin Disraeli, and this guy on the right is William Gladstone. Now, these folks were, in the late 1800s, they were prime ministers in the United Kingdom, right? And they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. They made some of the most important statecraft and foreign policy in Europe of that time, post-Napoleon time, late 1800s, early 1900s. Now, what was interesting is that when you were talking to Gladstone, you felt like you were speaking to the smartest man in the world. But they said about this with Disraeli, they said when you're speaking to Disraeli, you felt like he was speaking to the most important man or woman in the world. Think about that. It's like our earlier comment was made. Listening more, like Coach Campbell talked about, like really active and intentionally listening, paying attention to somebody, being empathetic to their point of view. So I ask you all, because you're smart, brainiac football players, that you need to be more Disraelian and less Gladstonian. Now say that to your friends and that'll blow their freaking minds. But think about that. There's a guy here who wrote a book, Jim Collins, called Good to Great. He's actually at Stanford for a good while. And he did an interview with a guy named William Stockdale, who was an admiral, who was a retired admiral, prisoner of war, ran for vice president, an amazing guy. And he said, if you, Jim Collins, can spend more time being interested in people and less time trying to be interesting, your life will be better. You'll be a better person. The book, Good to Great, I commend it to you as well. So let's just think about those concepts about empathy. Your ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Your ability to see them, to go with them, to listen to them intently, right? To see, especially as a leader, so much of leadership is interesting because you're way up here. There's a guy named Jim Comey. Remember Jim Comey was head of the FBI, kind of a controversial figure. He's usually like 6'7". The guy should have been a basketball player, FBI guy. Really, really tall guy. He gave a speech one time and he says, so much of leadership is just, instead of being way up on this perch, is being with people and communicating on the level with them. It was powerful because he's so damn tall. But the fact that you have to bend over to be a good leader, to pay attention, to get in a huddle with people, it makes all the difference in the world. Here's my last thing about empathy, this little aside. Avatar 1, the language they spoke was a language called Na'vi. It was created by a Cornell professor. He made a lot of money off of that. It's a fictitious language, but if you go back and watch the first one, I don't know about the second one, but in the first one, the way they greet each other, they say, I see you, when they talk to each other. So that's a little trivia. So you play Trivial Pursuit and you win, I got that, because I told you that story about Avatar. So that's a little bit about empathy. Now I'm going to have to mess with this a little bit, and I do apologize. I don't know how this happened with my slides. So that was the second B. Now, this is the other B. God, these things are flipped. I don't know how that happened. So you're going to have to just take notes. Again, I do apologize for this. The B here is actually to be accountable. I don't know how that happened there. It never happened before. The B here is to be accountable. Typically on this slide, I have a picture of Harry S. Truman and then Coach Fisher DeBerry, who coached me and Dave Lackey, who I'm going to talk about in a second. But everybody knows who Harry S. Truman was, right? Right? You better know, otherwise we're taking your damn award away from you. Who saw Oppenheimer? Who saw Barbie? All right, y'all a minute. I saw Barbie. He's depicted in the movie, and we know the movie's about the atomic bomb. So imagine I had my picture of Truman up there, and again, I apologize. But the thing about Truman, which was very interesting, is that he was president, vice president, Roosevelt's president. Roosevelt passes away. Roosevelt had been a president for 4 terms, right? Pretty amazing stuff. He passes away in the 4th term. He's beloved, sort of the uncle of the entire, United States of America. He passes away. You can imagine the scene. There's a funeral that takes place, and Truman makes his way back to the White House, and America is distraught, and we're at the very end of the war. Hopefully we're going to win and everything. And people come in, Leslie Groves and other people come into Truman and they say, I know it's a tough time for you, Mr. President, but oh, by the way, we have this thing called an atomic bomb. It can destroy the world 10 times over. It might even light the atmosphere on fire if we mess it up and cause this uncontrollable chain reaction. And you have to make a decision, Mr. President, on whether we should drop it or not. Good luck. You can imagine, and again, I'm sorry I don't have my be accountable down here, but please write this down, that Truman had a saying. It said, the buck stops here. The buck stops here. So be accountable. And that was an extreme example of being accountable. The political, the political historians will wonder, from a philosophical standpoint, should we have done it? That's not the point. That's an important conversation to have. But the point here is that being accountable, which is what I think Alec talked about that before. Being accountable is very, very important to a leader. Quarterback in the NFL, big stage, right? You're accountable for the ball on every play. So he was a great exemplar of that. Alex was in his own right. But that was an example with with President Truman. Now, this other guy who you don't know, who Dave Lackey and I love, is a guy named Fisher DeBerry. He was my head coach. He's in the Hall of Fame now. Anybody from South Carolina? You're not going to want to be from South Carolina after I tell this story. I apologize. Because I'm going to make fun of South Carolina people. But you're from the other part of South Carolina, not this part of South Carolina. So Coach DeBerry was from South Carolina and happened to speak loud, often, quickly, and in a way that many of us could not understand. So he would say things like this, oh, my golly, man, we need to get a kick, the punter's the ball, we got to do this right now. We'd be like, what the hell did Coach DeBerry just say? I don't know, but if he keep running, he might just shut up. But he would just go on and on and on. I gotta admit, I can tell you what, we didn't play well against Army last year. We gotta do it better. What the hell is Coach talking about? Is that English? Do I need like a translator thing on this? And he had these colloquial sayings that were just the best in the world. He'd say things like this, oh, golly, man, if you go outside and you see a turtle on the fence post, he didn't get there by himself. What the? It's not biology, coach. There are no turtles. It's just a football. But anyway, by the way, here's the hint. Didn't get there by, it took a team to get the turtle. You got it, right. He's struggling. Help him out. Help him out now. Will's a turn-in. He's almost there. But so Coach had this wonderful way. Just want to give you a sense of his way, his way. So going back, I reflect on this moment about being accountable. Remember the point, be accountable. That Coach had us together. It was a couple years after Dave Lackey had graduated. I was a senior at the time. It was the fifth practice of two-a-days my senior year. We were in pads, and Coach was just going off, and he had us together in a semicircle. Most of the time in the practice, Coach kind of braided everybody up in a semicircle, and you're on a knee and you're listening. So we're all listening, and Coach is just going off. Like I said before, man, I tell you what, I don't know what we did against Navy last year. We might not be able, we got to do a better job. And Coach was talking so much, he had to switch knees. This dude is, damn. And he kept going, golly, man, I tell you what, I tell the receivers they're not doing a good job and they don't get, we had to switch knees again. Well, 17 knees later, Coach DeBerry said something that was very interesting. He said, by golly, man, what kind of team we have if everybody would have practiced just like you? My golly, man, what kind of team would we have if everybody would have played just like you? And my golly, man, what kind of team will we have if everybody would comport themselves in the classroom just like you? And man, it hit me right between the eyes. He was asking us to be accountable, to be accountable. And I flashed back to my moral philosophy class my junior year at the academy, because I am a scholar athlete like you guys are, and I took moral philosophy. And I thought about a guy named Immanuel Kant. Some of you all might have studied about Immanuel Kant, German philosopher. He has something called the categorical imperative. It goes something like this. As a free moral agent, how universalizable are your actions? So he asked basically, what kind of world would we have if everybody were to act just like you or you or you in a certain moral circumstance? That's an extreme example. of being accountable for the society that we actually live in, right? What would it be like if it was just like you are acting right now? Now, what's really interesting about accountability is that as you take on these leadership roles, because you all are lowercase L leaders and going to be uppercase L leaders, that accountability is something that grows and grows with you, right? Phil loves this line. Phil Marwell loves this line. And because my mama told me years ago that when you're a leader, the higher you get up in the flagpole, the more your butt they can see. And that paints a picture, doesn't it? Because some of y'all got big butts. Y'all remember that, right? The higher you get in the flagpole, the more your butt can see. So this leadership thing, this mantle of leadership in the military we call the loneliness of command, as you get more and more of it, it doesn't get like, well, I'm a leader now. Well, I'm done. Woo! I'm good. No. Now it starts. Because here's the deal. When you're a leader, somebody's always watching. Even when you think they're not watching. Even when you hope they're not watching. Oh, they're watching. And in the Army, they call it the standard. You are giving them the standard with your behavior. You are giving them the standard with your behavior. Case in point, when I was president of Hampton-Sydney College back in 2009, I ran that school for about 7 years, small liberal arts D3 school out in Virginia. A friend of mine let me borrow his cabin up in Charlottesville, and my wife and kids were out of town. I was going to get a little downtime as a college president. You don't get a lot of that, so I took my dog, Sammy, right, and drove up to the cabin in Charlottesville. And I remember I parked the car, I got out, brought my dog out, and all of a sudden somebody goes, Dr. Howard. I go, God? Is God talking to me? But it wasn't God. It was actually one of the people that worked at Hampton-Sydney College who happened to have a cabin next to my friend's cabin. First off, I thought to myself, we're paying her a lot of money to be able to have a cabin in this neighborhood. Not too bad. But I greeted her, said, how you doing? Nice to see you. I said, oh, you're up here staying at Dr. Hilden's house? Like, yeah, he's giving me that. And I thought to myself, and then we just greeted and I kind of walked off. And I thought to myself, man, that could have gone really, really bad. That could have gone really bad. I could have, gotten out of the car, scratched my butt, kicked the crap out of my dog. Like, Dr. Howard, you're a jerk. But I didn't. I didn't do that. And this kind of goes back to what Alex said, what being accountable is about, what it's not about is not being perfect or a perfectionist. It's being the best you can possibly be, right? So there's a difference. But that mantle of leadership, that burden of leadership is that you got to carry it with you in a way that's a little bit different. Again, I'm not trying to freak you out or zap your energy or whatever, but when you're doing it, it's not about you, it's about the other, so there's just more responsibility. But again, if you don't remember anything I say, the more you continue to lead, the more you move up, just recognize that somebody's looking at you and boy, they want to be just like, and they never forget. I remember I got a Facebook thing years ago, a message, and this guy, his name was Dennis, and he said, Chris, Howie, back in the day when I was Howie, he said, Howie, man, I remember when we were in 8th grade and I was in your math class and I was in I think he might have been in 6th grade. Not because I was in remedial math, but he was like a really, really smart kid, right? And I remember people just give them, back in the day, you just give kids a hard time because they were just younger than you. So they just picked on them. And I remember one time, Mrs. Stoltz, the teacher, left class and he was telling me the story. He says, people were picking on me. You stood up and said, hey, stop picking on Fred. He's a nice guy. Y'all need to stop making fun of him. And he says, my name wasn't Fred, but I appreciated the effort, Chris. I appreciate you trying to stand up for you, right? Because this point about leadership and accountability and empathy and respect for others and trying your best to be there for them. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. All right, so we got some messed up slides, some jacked up slides on my fault, but let's try this one more time. We got be yourself, right? We got be empathetic, right? And what's the last one? Be accountable. Okay, now, Lord knows what's going to happen next, but I'm going to try. I got one more B for you, and I think it's going to be okay. Yes, it is. Thank God. All right. That's right, huh? Captain Howard, January 15th, 1995, Laughlin Air Force Base near San Antonio, Texas, near the Mexican border there. And I'm in this T-37 trainer, Tweet, as Dave Lackey remembers well, the little Tweety bird. And I am gonna go on my 4th solo mission in that aircraft. And the Air Force is crazy. They slap you in an aircraft, they give you some training, then they say, go do it yourself, buddy. So I got out there to do it myself. So I'm taking off. I think my call sign that day was like Tiger 33. I take off, lift off, and I make a radio call later on in the mission that I'm flying. It's my opportunity to do acrobatics, and I make a call like this. This is Tiger 39, area 391, requesting permission to do acrobatic maneuvers, over. Roger 39, Roger 33, you're clear to do acrobatic maneuvers, over. Man, I was like, I mean, it's like Tom Cruise, man. You get the mask on, even though it's a small little jet trainer, nothing like my buddy Dave flew, but man, you just think you're just cooler than the other side of the pillow, man. Flying around in your jet, you're just listening, you sound like Darth Vader meets Tom Cruise. And as I said before, I've been given permission to do these acrobatic maneuvers, Split S, a chandelle, an aileron roll, and all these other cool things. And the piece de resistance was a maneuver called a Cuban 8. You want to see it? It's not a rhetorical question, ladies and gentlemen. You want to see the Cuban 8 or not? Yeah. All right, here we go. So Cuban 8 looks something like this. You want to see it again? Go from inverted, roll from inverted to erect, pull the stick. But unfortunately, when I pull the stick this way, the plane went that way. Now, you don't have to be a professor of aeronautical engineering at Stanford University to know when you pull the stick this way, the plane ain't supposed to go that way, which is what it did. And all of a sudden, a plane that typically sounds like this, sounded like this. That's a bad airplane sound. And all of a sudden, a guy who felt like he was like, was like, oh my God. And this plane started pitching down violently. I'm trying to recover it. My head is bouncing up ahead on the top of the canopy there, kind of hitting on the top there. Feel myself getting really negative in the seat, floating up kind of. And then all of a sudden, I start doing this really, really bad word problem. I said, okay, Captain Howard's going 320 miles straight toward the ground. A train leaves Chicago at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's always a train in these word problems, right? When's Captain Howard gonna die? And then as that starts to happen, this airplane, like I said, it was about 320 knots, it's a little faster than 320 miles an hour. It's not supposed to go over 270 knots. I just remember going to 270 going, bad airplane, bad pilot, 270, bad. But at one point I'm at 320 on the clock, on the speed there, airspeed indicator. The airplane started making these crazy sounds as I remind you, bad stuff, stay awake now. This is real stuff. Bouncing up, hitting the top of the canopy. Then at that point, ladies and gentlemen, I start to see things that pilots should never see. I start to see trees. I start to see leaves on trees. I start to see squirrels on leaves on trees. I start to see nuts in the hands of squirrels on leaves on trees. And then I say to myself, I'm gonna die. And then I say, oh, there's an ejection seat on this thing. So I reach down, grab the hand grips, squeeze the triggers, and it's just, so what had happened was, I pulled the hand grips, I squeezed the triggers, there's a little explosive thing in the bottom of the seat, blows the seat up, blows the canopy off, and you can imagine that 320 or so miles an hour and that canopy comes off, it's like getting hit in the face by a really good all-American free safety on a Saturday afternoon. No, actually a free safety on a Sunday afternoon. Was Lynch here a couple days ago? It's like getting hit by him. 3 of him at the same time, right? So, and the is the opening shock of the canopy, the parachute itself, which is a good thing. Parachutes are good things, I'm gonna tell you kids that. So the canopy opens up, I had all that exuberance going on, and all of a sudden I look over from right to left and I see the airplane hit the ground. It's about 800 meters away and fireball. And then I say, I'm no longer cooler than the other side of the pillow. Then I reach up, and I remember my training kicks in, folks, and I say, okay, I gotta raise my visor on my helmet. I gotta take the bayonet clips. I gotta remove remove the mask from my face. I touch my face, and I realize that my helmet had been sucked off in the ejection. I look at my hands. I realized that my gloves had been ripped off in the ejection. It was such a violent ejection. I touch the side of my face, and it's swollen and a little bloody. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna land right now, because I had a high-speed, low-altitude ejection. And I said, I'm gonna land right there. So I made a couple of what they call swings in the chute. I pummel on the ground, and I said, man, I just did a parachute landing. Now, I've been trained, I've done a bunch of parachute jumps, and you're supposed to do what you call a PLF, a parachute landing fall. You know what I did? I did a PFL, pretty freaking bad landing. Just hurt my knee, and I remember sitting up, feeling my knee that was throbbing. I was in some shock, saying some things that I should not say in mixed company, some really, really bad adjectives and nouns and verbs. And then I got up, and then training kicks in, and I started taking my parachute. In peacetime, your parachute is orange and white. So you want to be seen. Wartime, you don't want to be seen. Peacetime, you want to be seen. Took my parachute, spread it around, put some rocks around it, drank some water, set up my emergency locator transmitter, and sat there. And about 45 minutes later, 30 minutes later, another T-37 comes over, rocks its wings to say, I know you're there. So there I am, just waiting to see, to get picked up. And about an hour and a half later, a U.S. Border Patrol helicopter comes and lands, picks me up, takes me back to the Air Force Base, Laughlin Air Force Base. Again, I was right near the Mexican border. Well, I get out of the aircraft, the helicopter, and I go over to see Colonel Tim Pepe. He's the commander. He had a West Virginia accent, because all fighter pilots seem to have West Virginia accents. He says, Captain Howard, what happened? I said, sir, I was doing a Cuban 8, turned into a nose-low recovery, then it turned into an ejection. We said, well, son, you made the right decision, because I'm here to shake your hand and not pick it up off the ground. About a day later, I'm whisked down to Wilford Hall in San Antonio, Texas. I have surgery on my knee. I come back. I go through 2 investigations. One is the white hat investigation, where the colonel comes in with the team, and he or she says, what happened? What went wrong, so we won't have it happen again? Then there's a black hat team that comes in, led by another colonel, and he says, I'm not your friend, and you might need to lawyer up, buddy. We're looking for fault and dereliction of duty. I made it through both. No dereliction of duty, nothing out of the norm. They learned what I did. And about 6 or 8 weeks later of rehab and investigation, this, that, and the other, I get notice that this is what you did wrong, Captain Howard. This is what the airplane did wrong, and this is what the instructor pilot did wrong in the training. But you are cleared to fly again. These training accidents happen, right? So you're cleared to fly again. So I was thinking about Alex reflecting on his journey back. Mine wasn't as long, but just that moment of like, my life is over. I remember laying in my bed that night before and thinking to myself, and being cleared to fly the next, get back into flight training. So the last time I flew an airplane, I damn near killed myself. So maybe I'm going to go into the commander's office the next day and request a job on the ground. Maybe they have coal mining jobs, something below the ground. This flying thing, maybe it ain't for me, right? But I sat in my bed and I thought, all the people that had sacrificed for me to be here. I thought about, first off, the Buffalo Soldiers, right? The black Americans that had fought after the Civil War and had come out west and fought against the Indians as part of the U.S. policy, and how they were treated when they came back to towns. I thought about the 54th Massachusetts, which is the all-black unit. If you saw the movie Glory, right? James Kearney was a Congressional Medal of Honor winner in that unit. But when those men from the Buffalo Soldiers, when they went to towns like Richmond or Montgomery or Dallas, they were treated like second-class citizens, even though they served their country. Thought about the Tuskegee Airmen, 332nd Fighter Pursuit Group, led by Benjamin O. Davis Jr., the first African-American who graduated from West Point in the 1900s. He graduated in 1936. Take this out, ladies and gentlemen. When Benjamin O. Davis Jr. was a cadet at West Point, nobody spoke to him but for official business for 4 years. Then he went on to command the 332nd Fighter Pursuit Group. They escorted P-51 Mustangs, bombers, in World War II, all white bomber units. They never lost any bomber they escorted. But when he went back into a town, he was treated like a second-class citizen because he was black. Ladies and gentlemen, we had World War I veterans who were pulled off of buses while they were in uniform and beaten. One guy had his eyes gouged out by an angry mob for wearing his uniform, having served his country. Are you kidding me? I thought about all those things. I thought about my Uncle Bo, Charles Howard, highly decorated Vietnam veteran, 82nd Airborne, 101st Airborne. He's stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, Columbus, Georgia, after his second tour. He's driving off base. He gets pulled over by a police officer. Police officer says, "Hey, boy, you were speeding." And he says, No, sir, I wasn't speeding. He says, "Yes, you were in. Shut up." I thought about all those people and what they had done for me to be able to get back in that cockpit. So the next day when I went into Colonel Tim Pepe, I came to attention, I saluted him and I said, "Sir, Captain Howard reports prepared to fly." And that's the final B, is to be courageous. Be courageous. Now, what I'm not saying is you have to go out and crash an airplane to be courageous. There are other ways to be courageous and demonstrate courage. But I will tell you this, without a modicum of physical, moral, and spiritual courage, much of which you develop by playing on the gridiron, as Douglas MacArthur said, "On the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds, and other days and other fields will bear the fruits of victory." The steel with which you have gained as guys who played this combative sport that was almost lost of us until Theodore Roosevelt formed what became the NCAA in the late 1800s because football players were dying one a week or two a week, but we figured out a way to make it safer. That steel that you have in your heart to have the courage to do what's right. I mean, just young folks in here, who's under the age of 25? God bless you. Because first 25 was easy for breezy compared to the next. Your hair falls out, you gotta go to the bathroom all the time, it's terrible. Anyway, it's another story. But all the old people are like, yeah. But in all seriousness, you've got some tough road and rowing ahead, as Alex said, as Steve said, as Ronnie said. But you're okay because you have courage, because if you're gonna strap it on and play this game and have somebody knock your lips off, and like Coach Rucker used to tell us all the time, "Chris, don't get your lips knocked off. We're not bringing any extra lips in the bus, so you just be careful there." But you have that going for you. And notice in the workplace and what you do in your life, you're going to have people on your right and the left that they don't have the courage that you have. And this is not a machismo thing. I know women are a hell of a lot tougher than you are. It's not a machismo thing. But I want you to reflect on you have that. You know, the cover three, Alex was saying you don't have, maybe that doesn't translate, but getting hit so damn hard, and you stand up and you're like, what planet am I on? Let me go play some more football. That's what you got to have to be a leader, right? Is courage. So that's my last one. And again, I am so sorry for my jacked up slides, being a little bit out of order there, but we'll do the 4 Bs. Be yourself, remember? Me wearing a tie back when I was a knucklehead kid, my butt ugly uniform, more importantly, making the decisions in your life to be and do what you think is right for you and following your own inner light, as the Quakers would say. Being accountable, as I talked about Harry Truman and Coach DeBerry and Immanuel Kant, being accountable for your actions. You've heard that time and time again throughout this program. Being empathetic, having the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, not the sympathy thing, which is important, but more importantly, seeing people, respecting people, indemnifying their humanity, and finally, being courageous. So thank you all very much for your time. Want me to sit down or want to take some questions? I don't know how we're doing at time.
We have time for 2 questions.
Okay. Make them brilliant.
Make them brilliant.
2 questions right there.
They got a microphone they'll bring up.
The guy looks like Rick Ross back there. I like Rick Ross. Come on, man. Tell me you don't look like Rick Ross.
Yeah, I wish I had the Rick Ross money. But I do have a question since you started with the ad about college and especially working in higher education and seeing so much change since the pandemic. I just want to kind of hear about what you think about the future of education, especially with the introduction of artificial intelligence, and as well as so much question around our form of education, right? And how much worth is in the debt and the different things like that. So just what's the future for higher education, and how do you see that?
No problem. I'll say two things. One is education still is the best ticket to the American dream of being middle class. It's been proven empirically, quantitatively, over and over again that it means on average about $1 million to your bottom line in your lifetime to get a college degree. There are always going to be outliers, people that overpay, people more importantly that go. We have 36 million people that go to college to get some college but don't finish. That's terrible. But if you go and you finish, and we have to work hard on that, then it is, so my bottom line is it is still worth it. But there's so many things we can do better in terms of helping people understand that journey. My joke is at least to say, if your parents didn't go to college and their parents didn't go to college, then you go to college, it's like people speaking Chinese and Arabic to you at the same time. Because you don't know what a FAFSA is. You don't know what a credit hour is. So we have to be more deliberate and intentional. Technology helps us with that. It helps us meet people where they are. Better technology can lead to moments where students need greater touch to be successful. You see it at Arizona State. We have 100,000 students online, creating more flexibility. I think that's important. In terms of the debt piece, the weird thing about the cost of college is that people equate cost and price with like prestige. So there's a weird economic sort of thing going on there. But nonetheless, it's still very important. The last thing I would say, though, is that never let your schooling get in the way of your education. That's what Mark Twain said. Because so much of what your education is actually the life experiences that help you grow and mature, which are critically important. And the last thing I would say is that not everybody needs to go to, college is not for everybody, but getting a good high school degree is, and getting some post-high school training or education is also good. So we should not discount vocational schools, community colleges, et cetera. Dave runs he did go to college. He went to the Air Force Academy. He runs a big HVAC company with some of the smartest people in the world that did not happen to go to college in some instances, if I remember that correctly, Dave. So there's a couple of different factors there. So I have one more question, and then Mark's going to pull me off right here.
Yeah, Dr. Howard, thanks for being here. My question was, we've heard a lot about, what we have as leaders, but we enter a workplace surrounded by a lot of people that don't have what we have. Mm-hmm. And so I'd like to hear your best recommendation on how we utilize the skills that we have to bring those people that either don't care as much or don't have the work ethic or the courage like we have.
You should laugh at them and ridicule them. No, I'm just kidding. You should not laugh at them and ridicule them at all. I'm just being silly. You want to meet people where they are and help them go where they need to go. So it's like a coach, Coach Campbell, coach of your team, Coach Saberi. You have a group of athletes that are all different in their motivations, right? I mean, they want to play football, but some are motivated by, you need to get your butt out there. Some are like, come on, we need you to get your butt out there, right? So your job as a coach, leader, coach is what you ultimately are. If it's just one person or 10,000, is to figure out where people are and what they need to do to move forward. And as was said before, as Alex said before, people will model your behavior. If you come with a positive attitude, if you put yourself in the work, if you treat people with respect, people will react to that. And when things go bad, if you show some resilience, people will react to that. But they'll also react to you being empathetic and saying, like my brother runs call centers. He played football at Baylor, which, by the way, lost to the Air Force Academy in the Armed Forces Bowl this year. Yes! That's my big brother. I still have issues with him. I love him to death. But he was just telling me, he's like, Chris, let me just tell you the people in this call center and where they're coming from. It's like, it is not plain old senior high school circa 1986. And he's like, but they love my brother. I've been in the call center because he's like, he gets where they're coming from, but he gets the best out of them because he gets where they're coming from and he knows the mission. And they said before, I'll stop here, there's a great line from George W. Bush when he did the No Child Left Behind Act. He says, the soft bigotry of low expectations. If you expect great things from people, they'll do great things for you. It just might take a little time. You might have to do it in a way that makes sense for them, not for you. Thanks for your time.